Welcome to the Bioethics Babe podcast, where we examine the tough questions in human flourishing in light of science, faith, and culture. I'm your host, Arina Grossu Agnew. Now let's dive in. How do you grieve the milestones that may never come while loving the child in front of you with your whole heart? And where do you find hope when doctors, therapies, and uncertainty become your new normal? My guest today is Anja Baker, a pro-life advocate, wife, mother of 4, and parent to a son with complex medical needs, Hershey, also known as Hershey, who suffered a severe brain injury at birth. She joins us to share the heartbreak of receiving a life-changing diagnosis, the challenges of navigating medical parenting, and how her family's faith carried them through one of the darkest seasons of their lives. We'll talk about what society often gets wrong about disability, why every human life possesses inherent dignity regardless of ability, how raising Hershey strengthened her pro-life convictions, and the unexpected community that gave her family the space to dream again. If you or someone you love is raising a child with special needs, wrestling with grief, or wondering whether hope is still possible after a devastating diagnosis, I think this conversation will encourage you. Anja, welcome to Bioethics Babe.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting, going from listener to guest.
Well, it's exciting for me, and I know that our listeners are also going to appreciate your perspective, your experience, and hopefully it will bless a lot of people. So before we talk about Hershey, what first drew you into the pro-life movement?
Well, really weirdly, I believe it was a dream. I know that's like a very weird way to open it, but I really didn't grow up hearing about life issues, hearing about abortion. I didn't attend a church that ever really brought it up, although I think they had underlying pro-life beliefs. But for some reason, I had dreams, and I found out that I could be involved at first with 40 Days for Life by just praying before I could drive when I was a teenager, and wrote into a 40 Days for Life group that was praying. I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. You may have heard of the Dobbs decision. You know, we are where the Jackson Pink House Clinic, the famous Pink House of Jackson Women's Health Organization, is located. So there was a 40 Days for Life group going out there, but I could not drive. So I was praying from home, and I just wrote in to say, hey, solidarity, I'm 15, I'm praying with you, but that I'm fasting, but I'm not able to be there. So they invited me to their closing gala for Pro-Life Mississippi to sit at a table with the Choose Life Mississippi people who brought the license plate here. And when I sat there, it was just a pivotal moment. I knew I would always be involved because I sat with a young couple in high school with their baby who had chosen life. I sat with people who were bringing up statistics and demographics and the facts and the numbers. But then I also heard the testimony of a post-abortive woman, and I heard from an OBGYN. So I kind of got all fronts that evening. So it just goes to show you never know what an invitation is going to launch, because I remember thinking after that banquet, I don't know what this means, but I know I'm doing this. Like, now I'm doing this, whatever this is.
Oh, that's awesome. Many people think of the pro-life movement as focusing only on protecting children before birth, but your work extends well beyond that. What does being pro-life mean to you?
Well, being pro-life to me means having a whole life ethic. People often say from womb to tomb, but it also means supporting dignity in life, whatever that looks like, however brief, however long, whatever circumstances.
No, and I'm with you on that, which is why on the Bioethics Babe podcast, we cover all sorts of topics. I think that usually people think of just the abortion issue, which obviously is near and dear to both of our hearts, but it goes so much beyond that, right? And this is human dignity touches on so many issues, right? With whether it's end of life, whether it's reproductive technologies, disability, all those things. And so I think that this is where the pro-life movement needs to be. and really just our society, right, in protecting all human life. So, has becoming a mother of a child with significant disabilities changed the way you think about human dignity and the value of human life?
I don't think that it has ultimately changed it because thankfully I had a good foundation. I got great trainings through all the organizations I worked with and interned with. But recently I have connected some dots that part of the reason that I had a good foundation was because I was impacted by things as a child. And it's really gotten me to thinking that it's just so important that we share with children, even just at their age level. I was in elementary school when Terry Chavo was going through her ordeal with her family and was at the end of her life. And I remember hearing about that on the news and seeing magazines in the grocery store. And I wasn't raised with people speaking about those issues necessarily, but I remember really thinking about it and hearing my mom talking about it. And then I recently was remembering while listening to one of your guests about George Bush bringing the snowflake babies into the Oval Office. I was in elementary school during that too. And so I think there are some foundational things that happen that plant seeds in one direction or another about how you view human life and dignity. And then when it appears in your own life, it helps you, not that people don't change, but I think it helps you lean in or lean out. And I think that those foundational events shaped me in preparation for what was to come providentially.
Mhm. What do you wish more people understood about raising a child with disabilities and about the inherent dignity of every human life, regardless of ability?
I think often there are two extremes presented, either the very negative, scary, maybe false medical information or worst case scenario presented that leaves out all the joy and all the happiness that comes from raising that child. But then I also think sometimes in the pro-life world, we can look at it with rose-colored glasses and say, oh, but that child's going to be so joyful. Or like, I know special needs people who they're so happy all the time. And I think what we get wrong unintentionally is not what gives us dignity, that we will be joyful or the doctors will be wrong or they actually will beat all the odds and will live 35 years or 60 years. It's none of that. And I think we know that, but we forget that when we are trying to share with the public how much we celebrate disabilities.
I think that's a really good point because on one hand you have, the doctors giving you doom prognoses, etc. And especially, and I'd like to get into this, whether, doctors guided you in any way that you thought was not well, but also on the other hand, obviously, when there's complex medical conditions that requires so much more effort and time, and that child might not be happy all the time, but as you said, a person's dignity isn't based on any of those things, right? And so
Right.
we take it as it comes. And so I think it's good. It's good and to point that out and to be realistic about what to expect. And obviously, different families have different experiences depending on the level of the complexity of a disability. They talk about children with Down syndrome as having the happy chromosome, right? So, but obviously there's so many needs that need to be taken care of, and at the same time, God does bless people with not only the capacity and ability to handle that, but also just all the blessings that come with the sacrifice. And so, love to hear more about your experience with that. Have you encountered assumptions about Hershey's quality of life, and how do you respond to those conversations? And have they come from healthcare professionals, or have they come from people?
I think I've been really blessed to be around people who do presume competence most of the time. I think the only provider conversation I've had with a medical professional where I didn't think they were considering him equally was weirdly with a dentist, because they thought he didn't have a need for teeth, and because he doesn't eat. Now he's G-tube fed primarily, but at the time he was not. He was eating orally, but he couldn't keep up. Eventually he got a G-tube or a feeding tube. But I remember the dentist saying, like, well, he doesn't really need them. And you don't just need your teeth for eating. You learn things, even though he doesn't speak, speech, language, pathology wise, it's a huge learning curve if you were to lose teeth. I think it is for kids who are in speech therapy. When they lose teeth, they have to learn some new techniques. It's also your smile. Teeth matter. God gave us teeth. So that was the only conversation that I had where I really felt like, if he was typical, would you really just think it was no big deal to just pull all his teeth out? But luckily we found an amazing alternative provider. But sometimes I've noticed people do not think he can hear them or that he can understand them. And I'm sure he cannot understand everything, but he understands a lot more than people realize. And I think that's for most nonverbal disabled kids. But really, I just guide them by saying, oh, he can hear you, especially when I'm talking to kids. I can say, oh, he can't see everything, but he can hear you, and he really likes kids. Or even if it's an adult, I can say, oh, yeah, he can pick up on everybody's voices here. He's just listening. And usually they are pleasantly surprised and they say, oh, okay. Oh, okay, sure. Then I'll talk to him.
Mm-hmm. When people meet Hershey for the first time, what do you hope they see beyond his medical challenges?
There's something not tangible about noticing that he understands what's going on around him, the type of people that are around him. He knows when he's being spoken to and what for lack of a better word, is the vibe is in the room. He has a lot of joy when I think he knows there's goodness in the room and there's beauty in the room, even without having full visual capacity. And so I think it gets people to think about what is there that we don't see, we don't feel, but we know is there. There's something transcendent that we kind of can't put our finger on that he clearly is tuned into.
Mm-hmm. And your family's journey has included grief, resilience, and ultimately learning to dream again. Can you take us back to the very beginning of Hershey's story, from discovering you were pregnant, throughout your pregnancy, and the dreams you had for him before he was born?
Yes. So Hershey is second born. I have an older son. All my kids are about 2.5 years apart. And really, I was excited to be pregnant again. I wanted a big family. And it was during COVID that I found out I was pregnant. So we thought, well, this is something positive to look forward to. Life carries on. Life moves on. I think when I found out I was pregnant, it was probably more of the lockdown era. So we were like, something to look forward to. This is great. And I am an only child, so I was really looking forward to seeing siblings. Oh, they'll do Christmas together. They'll do bedtime together. They'll do Easter egg hunts together. And that is the part that I think long lasting has been hard, is letting go of that sibling relationship that I thought was going to be in these younger years. Dreaming your whole life that you'll have kids that will have a typical sibling relationship.
Mm-hmm. And what has Hershey taught you about joy?
Well, he really teaches me and others, I think, to get over it, to get past what is going on with us, because he can be going through so much and have a peace about him. If he's crying, it's pretty bad. His whole first year of life, he cried. So now people can't imagine that because he's so joyful, but his whole first year of life, he just cried and screamed, and he didn't sleep properly for 3 years. I mean, does he sleep properly now? Probably not necessarily. We definitely have bad bouts, but he generally sleeps. And I have a loose expectation now, but he certainly did not sleep. Me and my husband took turns sleeping and did not sleep in the same room for 3 years. So once we got his sleep figured out, he really blossomed and became this joyful little child. And like I said, that's not his determining of his worth or what he means to our family, the fact that he can smile, although we love his smile. But he also has a peace about him when you know, man, he has had the worst night. He's in pain. Right now, he's recovering from a double hip surgery. And then you just see, okay, he hears a song he recognizes, or a visitor comes who he loves, and it lights him up, and he's so calm. And you think, wow, I really get upset over much less.
Let's dive into the diagnosis itself. So you had a normal, healthy pregnancy, right? You were going to your ultrasounds, to your doctor's appointment, and everything looked good. And then during the birth process, Hershey experienced a severe brain injury, right? Can you
Yes.
take us back to that reality as it was happening, and then the first days and weeks and what your family was experiencing?
Yes. So I was 26. I had a healthy pregnancy like my last one, low risk. Everything looked good. Like you said, the scans were all fine. And he sustained an injury, a severe injury during birth. And what they often will do, so this is called HIE, Hypoxic-Ischemic Encephalopathy, which is HIE is, much shorter and easier to say. But it basically means hypoxic, lack of oxygen, ischemic, lack of blood, encephalopathy of the brain. So he lacked oxygen and blood to the brain during delivery. And so when he was born, he met the criteria to be able to be cooled. He was cooled, put into a state of hypothermia. So I couldn't hold him or really touch him. And he was put on this cooling mat in the NICU. And they kept him like that for 72 hours. And the purpose of that is to stop the damage, to preserve what they can. So that is a very touch and go scenario where we did not know if he would live through that process. He was having seizures all through that process. And it was pretty close to Easter. For those interested, he was warmed up on the Feast of the Annunciation. So that is very special time for us. And we didn't know how he would do through the warming process, if he would continue to seize, if he would come out of that okay. He had different things going on with different organs, like his kidneys. We wanted to see what would restart and what wouldn't. And then we ultimately had to get an MRI later to see, okay, what are we talking here? Are we talking minimal damage, moderate, mild, severe? And unfortunately, we had to get the call that it was severe. And so there's a big part of you as parents in that situation that's just so glad that he survived. But then there's also the huge amount of grief to say, well, what does this mean? Because when it comes to brains, people don't really know. I was listening to another guest you had talking a lot about brains. There's so much we don't know about brains. And so you can't just look at a scan and say, well, according to this, he can't ride a bike, but he'll be able to speak. And he will have trouble with spelling, but he'll be fine respiratory wise. You can't really map out a brain like that. There are areas of the brain that match to different associated skills, but your brain also can rewire and do funny things. And so every area of his brain has damage to it except the prefrontal cortex, which I find interesting because he seems to have a big cause effect. He loves things being dropped and crashing, and he loves the cause effect type play. So I find it interesting, but we just didn't know if we were going home with our baby. Is this a child who walks late? Is this a child who speaks but not all the way? Is this a child who smiles or doesn't smile at all and really can just be on oxygen support or seizure support and isn't going to be able to communicate with us? Or are we talking somewhere in the middle? It's like such a big spectrum. And so the hard thing is realizing, I remember having this feeling like I'm 26 and my life's over. Like my life's just medical now. There's nothing left for me. And now I can't be the parent I wanted to be to my older child. And my older child doesn't get a sibling relationship that he should have. And now there's no time for my marriage. And then I started to think, oh my goodness, I'm never going to retire. I'm never going to be an empty nester. I'm never going to be able to have goals for when my kids are older. Financially, how will I do this? How am I going to go back to work? So many pieces of life grieved. And even as I'm saying it now, those were such big things then. And now I'm more in a state of it comes and goes, but like radical acceptance about a lot of it. I no longer really care about my retirement. I'm just thankful for the time that we have together. Things like that definitely got better over time.
Mhm. And in the process of all this, how did your expectations of motherhood change almost overnight?
Yes, I think I wanted to be able to do everything for my kids. I think most moms feel that way. And I realized that I would necessarily be limited. There's just no way around it. If you have a child with special needs or disability, you are only one person and you can't do all things. And so some things, even still, I struggle with are off the table or not realistic or not able to do easily or frequently like I would hope to. I would hope to be able to shift things around. And for instance, a good example I bring up is 10,000 hours outside. Oh, I would love to just dive into that, but it's not realistic when you need outlets and medication. And that means that his siblings don't get 10,000 hours outside either.
Mhm. And obviously, you said that some of these expectations you had, and even and thoughts about the future, that you were able to accept, and basically, it's radical acceptance of what is. Um, and what about some of these other things that you just mentioned? How did you resolve them internally for yourself, and also for families listening in, people listening in who also have either a child with disabilities? What would you say to them as they're processing these things, right? Because I think that these are the types of things that when someone's thinking about having a child with a disability, and if they're not formed, if the person's not formed to understand the dignity of every person, this is where, doctors might mm, suggest, if a woman knows that she's pregnant with a child with disabilities, the doctor might push her in the direction of abortion, etc. And so there's a lot of fears and also expectations that there's a death to self, right? So, what would you tell someone who is going through the same thing or has gone through that?
I think there are a few comforts. So one, there are things that Herschel will never do that I wish he could do, that maybe he'll do in heaven. But there are things he is doing by nature of his witness that he otherwise would not be doing. I know sometimes the disability community likes to push back and say a child does not just exist, their disability does not just exist to be a constant witness, like they're their own person. And I hear that, but he is a witness to wherever he goes. Just the other night we had a church event at our house because we can't really go anywhere, but we invited people over our house. By the way, we can only temporarily not go anywhere while Herschel is recovery. We in life can go places, just not to scare your viewers. But we had the event come to us, and Herschel was just listening to a priest speak at our home on a big giant beanbag in our living room. And I thought, he's witnessing to everyone here. And he has gone with me to the oral arguments outside of Supreme Court for Dobbs. He's been with me on interviews. He's come with me to the state capitol. And I know that that's because of the specific type of work that I do, but you'd just be surprised what new things that child can do that your typical children maybe can't or don't have the opportunity, or their disability provides them a platform to be able to witness to people even as a child. So that is a special newness that he has to offer that I would not have pictured for him. Also, he has surprised me. So the second piece is he has surprised me and he has done things. I am a realist, and I was afraid after a certain point to be optimistic, because when the answers are no, he will not, no, he will never, no, and time goes by and you realize he's not going to walk, he's not going to talk. When these things go by, or even I held out that maybe he wouldn't be epileptic, and he continues to have seizures. So when these things do not go away, you kind of sometimes, one way someone can cope is by forgetting to hope for a positive outcome. So then he has surprised me by learning his colors, learning his body parts, and indicating to me that he knows it, using a communication device with his vision, things that I was afraid to believe that he could do because I didn't want to be disappointed. And then we had therapists and teachers believe, and I had to be corrected, actually. I had to be the one to get on board and believe in him. And those things, there are trade-offs. It is not honest to say to someone, like, it'll just be the same. You'll just be able to do everything that you were able to do before. There are trade-offs, but there's a lot of beauty in it. And the sibling relationship, for example, that I keep talking about, he has a sibling relationship. It looks different, but he does have special moments with each of them and a different relationship with each of them.
Well, that's beautiful. What do you wish people understood about grieving the future you thought your child would have while still deeply loving the child right in front of you?
Well, I would say something that I would have previously looked at as like the worst thing that I now am counting as a privilege is that I do know he has a shortened lifespan. I don't know if it'll be a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years. There have been different people who have looked into that, and it could be that he lives to be a young adult. But the point is, unless something crazy happens to me and my husband, we will live to bury him. We will live to see his funeral. And you don't want that as a parent. You never want that as a parent. However, we have the benefit of knowing that that's the case. So we've been given the opportunity to live life with his siblings, especially while everyone's under the household, as though we have limited time. So many families lose children to an accident or a sudden illness, a number of things, right? But right now, all of us in our nuclear family live together under one home, and we don't truly know. We're more aware of the fragility of life. We don't truly know when any of us could succumb to anything, but we do know that it is in fact limited. Therefore, we do need to make the most of the time we have together. And I think, wow, so many people don't know that the end is near for them. We can live life, if you could do it all again, but we're getting the benefit of that the first time around.
I mean, that's such a beautiful perspective. And I think that we could all benefit from living with that in the back of our minds, that we have limited time. And like you said, you don't know how long. And we assume, well, okay, everyone is healthy, so we can expect X, Y, or Z. But as you and I both know, that there could be unexpected things happening. And so it's a beautiful perspective to appreciate every single day with your loved ones, and to not take it for granted, because we just don't know. And like you said, given what your family is going through, that's become more evident, and at the same time you've been able to appreciate it more. So that sounds like a beautiful perspective to take, and hopefully our listeners will also be touched by that. So let's talk about what it looks like, in terms of your medical parenting. So one of the things that you said in a recent article is that the hardest thing about medical parenting is not knowing what you don't know. And you also said something to the effect of, being given, I guess, driving a car without a map and not even knowing how to drive, right? Can you unpack what you mean by all of that?
So I don't know about you, but even parenting one child before him, I barely knew when to give Tylenol and Motrin. Like, I had the privilege of really having not needed to be exposed to the medical world. I was never hospitalized until I had a baby. I really didn't grow up having to go to a lot of appointments, and certainly some people do. I've known people who have worked in the medical profession and then they become a parent of a disabled child, and it doesn't make it easy. But I had no context. So I've seen this with other parents as well. You don't even know what questions to ask the doctor. You get in front of that specialist or that doctor over other doctors, like a palliative care doctor or a complex care doctor, and you don't even know what bodily system to ask about because they're all affected. I've mentioned a few bodily systems here. We've got skeletal, vision, brain, like epilepsy, seizures, dental, gastro. I mean, can go all the way down the body. The brain affects every single system. So often when I meet parents new to a diagnosis, I will ask questions like, have they mentioned this? Have they mentioned that? And often they'll say, no, what about that? So the thing is, you don't know what you're curious about because you've never seen it before. And it's not until you see something new or notice something new, or you find out, oh my goodness, I didn't even know to look for that. I didn't even know that that was a thing, the thing that we're now encountering. And so it could make you very anxious in thinking, well, if I had known that, then 5 months ago, I would have done this differently, or I would have done that differently. And that is just the nature of it. It doesn't really get easier on that front because you always want to do the best for your child, and you're always learning new things medically. Even the top specialists could never come into your home and specifically predict every single thing. But it is really good to have peers, to be a part of a community of similar diagnoses or same diagnoses. It's not always possible to have same diagnoses, but maybe we fall into a similar bucket because you can ask each other questions to say, have they said anything about his sleep? Have they said anything about her movement that's like that? Or have you tried this food? Or have you tried this type of equipment? Or this hack or tip or trick? That is honestly a lifeline. And especially because online, a lot of the disability community is extremely pro-abortion. So there is sometimes a huge disconnect in worldview. I know the support group for my son's condition very much was mourning the overturning of Roe v. Wade and said that women like me should never have to go through childbirth again. And it can be increasingly isolating when it's already an isolating experience. And so to have peers with a similar worldview in the same bucket as you helps you learn better over time what questions to ask therapists, teachers, providers, you name it.
Mm-hmm. And, even though you start off not knowing what even questions to ask, by the end of, or even as you're going through this, you become the expert for your child, right? You know more. You're able to advocate for your child more now because the different medical professionals you meet don't know exactly the ins and outs of his condition the way that you and your husband do, and your children. And so it's interesting how you can just have such a huge learning curve going from not knowing even what to ask to, hey, you are the expert on your son. And so and that all comes with time, right? You've done a lot of research, the experience of what his needs are, all those things kind of come together. But the message for our listeners is that you don't have to have all the answers. You'll, in time, get the answers you need, and become the expert for your child's condition, or whoever in your family has that. What were some of the biggest learning curves you faced navigating doctors, therapies, and specialists?
I think that's a good question to follow the previous question, because I think we assume the specialists or the doctors are going to know the answers. And even if you have the best providers in the world, like you said, there's only one of your child, and good medical providers will tell you that the parents do actually know better, especially for a nonverbal individual. The parents or the caregivers will know better. This isn't normal. This isn't right. The markers that we need to be paying attention to that can only be learned over time. And so it was a big learning curve, realizing you can't go to the brain store and find out what brain product you need. It's like not inputs, outputs. It's try this, try that. Medicine is more of an art than I realized. I mean, it is a science, but it's also an art as far as treating individuals with different circumstances. And I think I was really out of my depth on that at first, and have come to realize, okay, I'm going to ask because I don't know everything. I cannot Google all these answers when these people have gone to school for tons and tons of time and seen different patients, but I at least can make more educated questions. and do some of my own research and say, well, what do you think about this? Have you ever heard of this? And bounce it off or get a second opinion or talk to another parent.
Hmm. And how do you learn to advocate for your child when you're entering situations you've never experienced before?
I think a lot of that is the Holy Spirit just giving a strong nudge, something's not right, or what about this, or what about that. But even if you're speaking of a secular person, I think like gut feelings, you do have to grow your instincts. And sometimes you'll get it wrong where, okay, my instinct was really anxiety, or I thought I had an instinct, but then I thought I was imagining something, but really it was a good instinct. So there's just, you have to give some grace to yourself to get it wrong. I often say out loud, I can't think of everything. I can't think of everything. So to try to extend grace to myself. And it certainly helps if you have a spouse or maybe a parent that's helping you, like someone else to sometimes be at an appointment to say, okay, this is what I heard. Is that what you heard? Are we understanding the same thing? Like, make sure that I'm understanding.
Hmm. And were there moments when you felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of making medical decisions for Hershey?
Definitely. I would say the hardest times are nighttime and the weekends because most offices are closed. You can't just, oh, well, I'll give a call to the office and I'll probably hear back in a few hours and then I'll tell them what's going on. It's kind of a joke within caregiving world that things always happen at night and the weekend. And so you have to make a call sometimes in the middle of the night. Okay, is this something we can manage at home or do we need to go to the emergency room? And that can be a tough call because sometimes if you're going to go to the emergency room, you might be there a long time. You know, if you just want something quickly verified, you could end up in the hospital several days or a week. And if that's what they need, that's what they need. But sometimes it can be an overwhelming decision to make. Okay, am I just being worried and this is something we can manage at home? Or is this need to be escalated? And ultimately, that is on you as a parent. And that is a big responsibility. But I do often reach out to nurses that I know, even if it's not a patient, like a family member who is a nurse, to say, okay, I've checked this. What else? What am I forgetting? What am I forgetting? Because I can't think of everything.
Mhm. Let's talk about some of the idea of hope, the theme of hope during difficult seasons. So, how do you keep going during the days that feel impossible?
Well, and that's been fresh. This surgery that my son, he's had a double hip surgery recently, and there have been some long nights and long days with 24/7 care. We can't always have a nurse here or a parent of mine here. I would say that I ask for the grace for just the hour or just the day or just the afternoon. I kind of have to chunk things up, which is hard. I think God is improving me as a human being in this way because I am type A, as they say. I'm a planner. I'm organized. Since I've had him, I've had to get used to being late where I go or being the last one to show up or forgetting something. And I hate for that to reflect on me. I'm very sensitive to the idea that anyone would think that I'm not organized or that I'm not prepared or that I didn't plan ahead or that I wasn't up until 11 p.m. planning for the next morning. And that's pride, right? So God's working on me in that area, but I have to extend grace to myself and to those around me and my own kids and my own husband to say, I need to get to lunchtime or I need to get like the hour or sometimes the next 5 minutes. I don't know if it's not like the best show in the world, but I don't know if anyone's ever seen Kimmy Schmidt. She's always like, I can do anything for 10 seconds. And sometimes that is a decade of a rosary, or for people that are not Catholic or, not religious, it can be like, okay, this song length, I can get through this song length or this episode length. Just some mental tricks to get yourself through chunks of time instead of thinking about the entire week or the entire month or your entire life, which tends to happen if you spin out.
Yes. And when this first happened, speaking of hope, I'm sure that, there was a lot of confusion, grief, all the isolation, all of that. But how did you also process maybe your feelings of betrayal towards the medical professionals who were there that day, et cetera, and just even processing what had happened and still kind of looking ahead with hope?
I would say that we are all human beings and we are all capable of error and we're all capable of not doing our best on any given day. And intent is really important, when you're talking about spiritual acceptance, forgiveness. I'm blessed to not really carry on to anger about the actual events of my son coming into the world. But I think it's only because I know that in my situation, at least, people didn't want this for him. So no one wanted this for him. And that can carry you a long way. I've heard about other people who a baby got a virus from a loved one kissing the baby. Certainly there was not intent other than to love and admire that baby. And it doesn't make it okay. It's still a horrible situation, child disabled from that kiss. But I think it can get you past a lot of points to think about intent and also to realize the nature of humanity and the nature of sin, that the reason sin is bad is not because God is in the sky saying, that was a no thing. I told you no. It's because he loves us and he knows that our actions affect others and have ripples in this world. A small thing can ripple for generations because now, my kids, this will always be a part of them losing a sibling. There were supposed to be grandchildren and a career. And of course, God works all things together for his good and God has a different plan for Hershey's life. But it made me think about like when I sin or I kind of rest on my laurels or whatever it is that I'm doing, I am not just affecting me. I am causing a ripple effect, and not to scare me about my sin, but just to keep in check that I am a flawed person.
Mm-hmm. And, I did the episode with Senator Rick Santorum about Bella when she turned 18, and with their family situation, they were told that she wouldn't live for very long. And here she is, 18 years later, and she's still going strong. And
Yes.
so, my hope for you with Hershey is however many days God has for him, that obviously I know that you and your family are embracing every moment and cherishing every moment. So we leave that to God, but it sounds like you are doing everything you can to just take in and appreciate every single moment. Were there people who carried hope for your family when you couldn't?
Definitely. I would say, I'm sure in the early days, I feel people's prayer for us, lifting us up when I kind of just am spent and don't know what else to say. My internal monologue doesn't have a lot of hope in it at times. And I know that there are people lifting us up, but I would say the biggest thing is he has a special needs Christian school that he attends. It's actually a free school. It's called Harbor Day School. And there's only a couple of schools like this in the whole nation. And we just happen to live near it. And in the beginning, I thought they were a little bit crazy because they were saying things like, oh, he's so smart. And he like is so capable and he knows and he does. And I had just come off of 2.5 years when I met them of won't, never will. Not that doctors were telling me that. I actually have been so blessed to not hear that naysaying from doctors. They're more of a, I don't know, but just realizing ourselves, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. And having to even talk our own parents, the grandparents through it, like that he's not going to do these things, to then have the space to accept what he was good at and what he was strong in and what he had a natural aptitude for and what his personality was really like. I think they believed, and that helped him blossom. And then I had to stand corrected. As much as I loved him, I had been scared to really envision his strengths. And they really did that for me. And more recently, some friends of ours from college fundraised for us to have an adapted van with a ramp because we were really pushing our limits on the medical equipment and all of our kids in a minivan. And I thought, it's going to take them all year. That's crazy. And it took them 5 weeks.
Wow. What a blessing. How has your faith influenced the way you've navigated this journey?
Well, for me, it's caused me to lean in. Certainly, like I said, being dependent every hour. I often forget. I often don't do right and depend on him and get wrapped up in my own heads and thinking too hard about the future. But I would also like to share that my husband, who was a Christian, he was a Christian when we got married. We've been together since we were 15. He's been a Christian the whole time, but his faith really came alive when my son was in the NICU. We're both raised evangelical and love all of our evangelical peers. We're in the Bible Belt. There's amazing churches, but now we're both Catholic. And for those who are interested in that topic, my husband decided he would do RCIA when we were in the NICU. He told him he was going to do it. And it is because he saw the purpose of the universal community coming together for us. The masses offered, the rosaries offered, the fact that the Annunciation was happening. And then we were going home on Good Friday. And all of these things came together for him. And so since then, people cannot picture it. I had friends who used to assume that my husband was atheist, just assumed it because he never talked about his faith, all the way to now he is very pushy about getting people to lean in about their faith. And we feel blessed to have the example of the saints. I didn't grow up with the concept of saints. Now that I have the concept of saints, I know, and I've said this in other pro-life venues, like sometimes things stink and then you die. That's like a big lesson from the saints that I would not have otherwise had.
Mm-hmm. And what a beautiful perspective, even from what your husband experienced, because sometimes, when there's tragedy or suffering, people turn away from the faith, and in your case, he basically rediscovered the faith, and so that's beautiful. And again, leaning into it, I think is the way to go, because God provides, right? And as you, in that beautiful story you just mentioned about you needing a van with a ramp, you thought it would take all year to fundraise, and here you are 5 weeks later. There it is, God provides. And so it's beautiful to see that in action as it's happening in your witness in your life. So you talked about Harbor Day School and its impact on you. In that article, you talked about how it gave you the space to dream again. What were your biggest fears about sending Hershey somewhere outside your home?
Oh, I just thought no one else was going to be able to handle it. I just thought he's going to cry the whole time. He's not going to be able to do their activities. There are a lot of other children who go to the school who have different disabilities, but maybe they can walk, or maybe they can talk, or maybe they can sit up and use their hands more. His level of cerebral palsy is severe. And so I thought, I don't know. I can't picture it. And they're just going to call me and tell me to come pick him up. I don't know if you've ever left your child in like a church nursery, or you're at a Bible study or something and you have to leave your kid and then they have to call you back. But I just felt like that was what was going to happen. And yeah, they were like, we're not going to have a problem handling him. Who will handle it? And I think it gives other people hope, not just for the school, but we use a number of respite programs from awesome churches in our area that have special needs respite for parents, just like a night out. They take the siblings. And I just thought, okay, are they going to be able to handle it? And then I've had parents worry the same thing. And then when they find out that Hershey's there, they're like, okay, if they can handle Hershey, I think they can handle my kid. So that makes me feel better. And that makes me feel good that the fact that they're seeing that the staff or the volunteers can handle Hershey, then that gives them ease. That is something that Hershey is doing for them.
Mm-hmm. And when you said that through the school community and what you've seen the school be able to help Hershey with, that it gave you the space to dream again, what did those words mean to you at the time?
It's kind of like if you were house shopping for no reason, like, okay, we definitely can't afford this house, or we definitely can't afford this car, but we're just like window shopping and someone's talking to you about, you could live here, this could be your car. And that's what it felt like. the staff member, Tammy, who said that, she was saying, parents often say that they come here and then they learn to dream again. And I was like, I am interested in that. I am interested in dreaming again. Speak more of this thing that we can't afford. We can't afford it, but please do speak of it. And looking back, I think, wow, I was just so trying to protect myself from disappointment. I really did need people to hold hope so that I could have expectations and goals again.
Mhm. And what dreams do you have for Hershey today that you didn't think were possible a few years ago?
Something that I love about his life is that he has his own people. He has people that don't have anything to do with me. So when he was a baby, I thought, God, if you could just let him have a favorite toy, if you could just show me he has a favorite toy or a favorite color or a favorite song. And then when he would show that, I would really hold on to that. He loves country music. And when he first expressed that as a baby, I was like, he loves country music. That's like the main thing about him is he loves country music. I just was so happy. And now as a 5-year-old, he's got all of these people who know him from volunteering in different spaces, camp, respite ministries. He even has gone to special needs VBS. I would have never thought him and his brother could go to the same church for VBS, but there's an amazing Presbyterian church near us that offers that special track. And I'll be in public sometimes and someone will say hi to him who I do not know, which shows me he has his own life and he's his own person and he's not just like an extension of me.
That's beautiful. Let's talk about Hershey's growth. So you already mentioned that you weren't expecting that Hershey would learn the colors or body parts, etc. What are some of the other ways that Hershey has grown that have surprised you the most?
He is very mischievous. There is a belief that second children are like notoriously the ones that get in trouble and kind of like drop your keys in the toilet and dump trash cans. He can't do all of that, but he likes to live vicariously through people who get in trouble. He laughs so hard at people stubbing their toe or falling over or dropping something. And again, I think it's that cause effect part of his brain that's so strong. Uh, and so he loves to make friends with people who get kind of like in trouble a lot. So there'll be like it seems like there's always one very active child with Down syndrome who loves climbing things or dropping things. And then the teacher's saying, come back here. No, don't go up there. Don't go up there. And he's cracking up and he loves it. And he loves if anyone rants near him, like I'll rant, let's say like rant about a politician and he's laughing at me, which does show how silly it is, how upset I am. But what I think it shows is that he has this social dynamic that's his own and his own strong personality. And it's taught me that, all of those posts that parents make, like 3 months old, I mean, it's very exciting. I don't mean that this is negative, but like 3 months old, they're doing this and doing this, now we're waving goodbye and we're saying 10 words and we're, all of those things that used to hurt, like to see those posts, especially if children were the same age as him. And I'm like, he should be doing that. He should be doing that. But now it's changed the way I talk about all of my children, where I say like, my third child, like he loves sports. He loves balls. He loves these colors. And it's caused me to look at children through the lens of personalities and strengths and stories about them instead of what they can do.
Mm. That's a really important point again, because on the podcast we talk about so much about that a person's value is not based on their capabilities, their capacities, or what they can do or what they can offer. It's just because they are. And so I think that drives that point home. You mentioned how social Hershey is. Can you share a story that captures that part of his personality?
I would say we often have people over and we often just by nature of the kind of work me and my husband have done, will have like political topics, political debates, and he just really cracks up at us ranting and raving. He knows that it's not normal to talk that way and not like it's kind of ridiculous of us. And so it really brings a comedic effect when it's even like a serious topic. And I think he senses when other kids need a friend too, and kids are drawn to him. And I think he brings a comfort to kids because they're used to seeing him, who maybe are new to school or not sure of the location they're in, if they're trying a new program and then they see that Hershey's there. I think he's a good fixture in a lot of people's lives.
Mm. And what milestones have been especially meaningful for your family?
It is a big one, knowing some of his favorites. We know that he loves Bluey. We know that he loves music and that he has favorite people and favorite teachers. But we really enjoy him eating. Now he just eats for pleasure. He can't eat enough to sustain the amount of calories he needs per day, but he has favorite foods. And I think it's really sweet. We have our church has a meal ministry where they bring our family meals. And I keep saying, like, we're not the neediest people, like, we're okay. And they're like, please just keep letting us bring you periodic meals. And I freeze them and I bring them out whenever we have like a big appointment day or recovering from surgery or a bad night. And it's just really a blessing to us. But they like will mark something that he can eat, like Hershey's special mashed potatoes, or like there's a cake in there and it's for Hershey. And yeah, I think it's just really special seeing kids' favorites and leaning into why are they drawn to that? Like, people are all drawn to different things.
Mm-hmm. How have his teachers and therapists helped him communicate in ways you hadn't seen before?
So the coolest thing we have on the frontier is that he uses a communication device now that is called an eye gaze. You've probably seen children, perhaps with autism or other disabilities, use what looks like an iPad with options, with letters and images. Well, he can't use his fingers enough to click the images. And so I really thought that was off the table for him until I saw other families online, never in person, using an eye gaze, which means using the movement of their eyes to make a selection. Now, we're still early in that process because it's a big learning curve for him to realize I'm in the driver's seat. I have multiple options. I mean, he's never had that, but we've done trials and we have tested some things, and he is so excited and lit up to show us, hey, I'm going to play this Frogs on a Log song. I'm choosing it, me, and I'm a big boy. It's just that pride. And I will say, and maybe this speaks more to the question of milestones and sweet moments that you asked, but when we were first setting up that eye gaze, my older son, who is 7, was with us, and his whole life, Herschel's been the way Herschel is. He was 2.5 when Hershey came home, so he doesn't remember any other way. But Hershey was able to look at the device, and a voice that Locke chose for him, a little boy voice, said, "Hi, my name is Hershey." And Locke was jumping, and my oldest, he was jumping and like so excited and wanted Hershey to show him again and show him again. And Hershey was like, as in the South, they would say, tickled. He was tickled. He was laughing so hard he could barely do it again because he was laughing. And I realized, oh my goodness, I'm tearing up because he is showing his big brother he can do something for the first time. I mean, he's done new things, but it's all been very slowly and very like therapeutic. And Locke was actually surprised and blown away by something his little brother was doing for the first time at 5 years old. And you could see that Hershey was understanding, like, I'm showing my big brother something.
Wow, that's really cool, and it's amazing to hear that this technology exists too, right? To help people communicate. It sounds like you have a really great community, not only with the school that Hershey's going to, but church community and support groups. How important is it for families raising children with special needs to know they aren't walking alone?
It's one of the most important things. It's why it was so deeply disappointing to see the Diagnoses group, the HIE community, be so grieved about Roe v. Wade overturning, or you see a lot of different topics, let's say LGBT issues or other hot topics, surrogacy, other things that are bleeding into the disability space. I don't know, probably a lot of your listeners have noticed this, that like disability kind of gets lumped in with other like identity groups. However, being disabled is not the same as like a sexual identity, for example. And so at least for Christian families or people walking through it who don't identify as left wing, it's more isolating than just walking a narrow path that not many people live, because then everywhere you look, all of the public resources, all of the institutions, the large hospitals, the Instagram accounts, like 9 times out of 10, they're not going to share a worldview with you. And so you have to find people in real life who you don't have to agree on everything. You don't have to have, I mean, I have friends who walk this path who are secular, who are of varying denominations of Christianity. It's not like you have to share everything, but to have more commonality, it makes you have someone to bounce something off of. I have a friend who lives up in Northern Virginia who we talk on Marco Polo, and we just make sure, hey, am I crazy? Are you crazy? Wait, are we okay? And we just have to bounce it off each other. And even though we can't get together in person, it's very difficult logistically to get disability families together, to just know that we can call or even sit with someone who doesn't have necessarily a disability situation. But I have a very good friend who has become a widow very young with small children. Totally different type of grief, totally different type of loss. But we can talk about grief. We can talk about hard things and hard interactions and difficult days where there's a mix of, well, I love that it's Christmas, but I also miss my spouse. Or in my case, I miss that my kids can't walk around and look at lights together. To have someone else to have those emotions with, sometimes you can feel like the person with the biggest problems in the room if you don't find people with parallel experiences.
Mm-hmm. One theme that has come out in that article, which we'll post as well, is learning to pivot. And you had said in there that they helped you master the pivoting game. What does pivoting look like in everyday life?
It would be really easy to sometimes say, well, this didn't work. So like, forget it. We can never go to the park again. Like, forget it, because it just can be painful. And a lot, you go through all that and then it doesn't work. To say, I sent this special spoon and this special meal so that they could feed him and it didn't work. So like, forget it. That's a temptation for sure. So the fact that they have just been so light on their feet about, okay, no, like we tried this spoon. It didn't work. We're trying this other spoon, okay. We're going to try plan B, plan C, plan D. They're willing to go all the way down the alphabet. And I've seen them do that for other children as well. Okay, this chair isn't working. This child cannot tolerate clapping. We're not going to clap in this classroom. Whatever they need to do to pivot, which has helped me pivot in general, not just with Hershey, but with all of my kids and even with friendships, to say, okay, I'm going to hold my plans loosely in my hand, which is naturally hard for me, but I'm going to do it because I love the person in front of me. And sometimes I think it's better this is just my preference. This is not necessarily a how-to, but I like to try doing something with Hershey, with my kids, and I'm not sure yet if it's going to work or it's a good idea. And then sometimes I'm wrong and it was not a good idea. And then we will not do that thing again. An example would be, I tried taking, I think when I had 3 kids, I tried taking them all to the science museum and going on this walking trail behind the science museum, and realized I cannot hold Hershey and push a stroller, or I cannot be pregnant and push a wheelchair and chase a toddler. So that was a disaster, but it's not a loss because I will not do that again, but we did try. And for me, knowing my outer limits has helped expand what we can do as a family. And then also, it's not closed forever. If that didn't work, that might work again next year, but I'll maybe bring a second adult, or maybe I'll strap the baby in a carrier first. Like, I just have to learn from that experience. I think special needs parents, caregivers get debilitated by the idea that everything is so overwhelming and can sound so scary that we're not going to try, because in all fairness, it's just really exhausting. It's like taking 4 kids times 3 instead of the regular difficulties of like trying to take multiple kids somewhere. So it's not every single thing is ultimately worth what it takes to get there. But that's how we have found what does work, by testing the outer limits instead of the counter, which is being afraid to try it. And so we never try it.
I think that's such a refreshing attitude. And I like the can-do attitude. You try it, you see what works. If it doesn't, you figure out what can work for the future. And, it's just a process of seeing from day to day, experimenting, as you said, knowing the limits. And then maybe it's for a time, maybe with more development, more this, that, or the other, uh, those limits won't be there, or just with an extra set of hands. Those
And
limits.
that's true of all kids too, because I made a mistake yesterday with my almost 3-year-old. I gave him a Spider-Man popsicle from the gas station and I thought that was fun. That was a big cleanup. We're not going to be doing that again.
So now let's turn towards what kind of encouragement you can give to other parents. So if a parent has just received a life-changing diagnosis for their child today, what would you want them to know?
I would want to be honest with them and say, it's not that it's going to all go away. It's not that it's not like a typical newborn where it's like, oh, it's so acute and it's so hard. But then 3 years later, you're like, I'm ready to do it again because I don't even remember the bad parts because it wasn't that bad, was it? And it all went away. I often hear that stereotypical advice, like they're only in your house so long, you only have 10 summers or whatever. The number changes every time I see it. But, one day I have older people will tell me one day you'll miss it all because it'll be an empty nest and you'll just look behind you and everybody will be in college. I don't think that kind of advice generally is very helpful. I know it's extremely well-meaning and meant to encourage people. I think even with typical kids, it doesn't really help you with today's problems to think one day they'll be in college and I won't even care that this is happening today. Okay, I get what they're grasping at, but I say to be honest, it is not going to be like that. It is not going to be a little phase and then it's over. It will ebb and flow. But you will get better at handling it. You will know what questions to ask eventually. You will fumble and get better. And then one day you'll turn around and you'll be helping someone earlier on the journey and you'll think, wow. I mean, to give a little story that highlights this, I remember being introduced to a special needs parent because someone thought that we should be introduced. And she told me, I'll be honest, I was mad when someone told me to talk to you. To me, she felt this person is saying my child's like Hershey and my child's not like Hershey. My child's not going to be that disabled or not be that limited or not deal with these things because it's a grief, it's a process of grief. There's different phases: anger, denial, sadness. And I could hear that and I could say, wow, I think that would have hurt me in the past to hear that someone's worst nightmare was to hear that their child would be like my child. But actually I can understand that. And I know what they're saying, and I'm not sad by that. I'm instead relieved that she is now ready to speak with me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've grown. I didn't even notice that I was growing. And so it's that you get more strengthened, you develop a foundation, you figure out who are your people and who are not your people right now. And that can change. And where are your resources and where to look. And it doesn't mean you have everything figured out. I mean, interview me again when he's 15. But it gives you a sense of it will not always be like this specifically.
Mm-hmm. And what would you tell the parent who feels like the grief they're experiencing will never end?
I would encourage them to say it does look different, but over time it does look different. But the grief is not leaving. The grief is here to stay. It will get smaller though. And suddenly you'll find yourself doing things that you could have never pictured without sadness. I'll give an example. When I was bringing out my older son's clothes to hand down to my second child, oh, I was so filled with grief because every little outfit of Locke's made me think of a moment, oh, he wore this at the park. He wore this when we made Christmas cookies. He wore this when we were going on a walk or we went on this vacation, and I'm passing them down to Hershey, who is never going to do those things in those clothes. It was a very painful process of picking out. I just thought I can't even put Hershey in these clothes because all I'm going to think about is he's never going to see the animals at the zoo. And it hurt so badly. Then I had my third child and I was pulling out clothes that Hershey was done with to give to my third. And I was halfway through doing it and I thought, I didn't even think about that one time. Wow. The grief is smaller. I still thought of it, but it's so much smaller and more manageable. And it's kind of like a little monster that's shrinking.
Mm. What does hope look like when circumstances don't necessarily become easy?
I think we just have to think about the long game to know that to have acceptance that it will never fully look the same. And I think as pro-lifers, sometimes we just so want to speak hope into someone who's facing something so big and so hard. And I think sometimes what people need is just to say, I know it's hard and I know it's bad and I know it's like worse than you thought it was going to be. But I'm here and I'm going to sit with you in it instead of washing it away or saying, well, you can do. I think about myself, 19 years old, being a little student, little pro-life student, telling people, you can do anything. Women don't ever have to give anything up, ever. You can be all things. That's what's so amazing about being pro-life. The reality is you can do a lot more than you think, but there are trade-offs, there are limitations, and we just have to find a way to help the person in front of us who's going through that realize we are going to be facing some limitations, but we will not abandon you as a loved one. We'll be here with you through that.
And that's a really good point too, because even motherhood in general, I love to ask the question of different mothers, like how do you do it all? And the answer I generally get is, I don't get to do it all at the same time. That there are
That's
chapters, there are different eras of even mothering, right? And so, but you get the grace for that chapter, and somehow get more done than you think you will, which is amazing. But at the same time, it's just having those expectations just kind of meet where just be okay with what you can do and what you can't do, right? When you're okay, so let's look ahead now to the future. Obviously, again, we don't know exactly how long Hershey will live, but where do you imagine him years from now in his growth and his trajectory, and what do you hope for most?
Well, I hope that he advocates alongside me for however long he can. There was a career day at his medical daycare where he gets therapy. They did a career day, and I really struggled with it because I don't know, maybe most normal parents they did like cute outfits. They just did like policemen and firefighters and doctors, little cute kid outfits. But I was like, I can't do it. I can't dress up Hershey as a doctor because I know he can't be one. That's just my temperament speaking. Maybe people find a lot of joy in just the dress up of it, but I was like, I'm not sending him to career day as a firefighter. So I dressed him in a suit and I made him a lobbyist. So I hope that, because it's true. It's true. I'm always telling legislators that I meet and advocates that I meet, Hershey's ready. We will go to the Capitol, take his picture. We will write an article, whatever we have to do to make life better for him and his peers, whatever that looks like. I know that there's a lot of pharmacy issues right now, and I'm hoping that his story of us using a local family pharmacy and how dependent we are on them and can move things forward. And so I think in his life, he'll continue to make friends and he'll continue to be a witness to decision makers. And that's what I think. I think it's no coincidence, for instance, that as a baby, he was up at the oral arguments for Dobbs. And as I was being interviewed by some major oppositional media, and I was speaking to the regular mom who's scared in Mississippi, where I am, I was saying, well, it's not easy. And I'm not speaking from a place of nowhere. I know that it's not easy. I am married and I have certain benefits afforded to me, but I do know what hard looks like. And I want you to not be afraid. And I think Hershey enables me to speak truthfully into that. And just by coming alongside me, he can do that too.
What a powerful witness. Your dream is for Hershey to, quote, and this is again from the article, shine brightly for all to see God's glory. What does that look like in your mind?
I think people pause when they see him, and I hope that continues. They pause and think, what would it be like to be him? But he's smiling, and so maybe I should be too. And I want them to see him and not see, oh my gosh, this is so scary. This is so horrible. Often I'll see a kid, it's right around 4 years old developmentally. A kid will be around Hershey at play dates. We'll have family dinners and they're all playing all around him. And then all suddenly it'll strike that kid who has known him their whole life. They're about 3 or 4 years old, and they'll pause and they'll look at his G tube, or they'll look at some piece of equipment we have. And then I talk to them and say, this is how he eats, but it doesn't hurt him. Isn't that funny? I think it kind of tickles. It's like another belly button. We talk about it, and it's great when their parents aren't embarrassed and they just let them ask me stuff, or really they don't usually say much. I want them to see that and say, I'm not scared of that. And one of the best compliments I ever got ever in life was a friend of mine who's single, who doesn't have a family yet, but wants one. And she said, you make me not afraid that if this were to happen to me, I know I'd be okay. I'm not so scared that this will happen to me. And that was the biggest compliment I ever could have given anyone. That anyone could have ever given me, is for him to show God's glory and not fear.
Mm-hmm. How has Hershey changed you as a mother and as a person?
Definitely, I think it's hardened me, for better or for worse. I think I'm already dispositionally very serious. And so maybe that's the downside is I tend to be very serious and pragmatic, but he has caused me to have to basically say, oh, well, let go of my plan more. And maybe the pride I have wrapped up in what people think of me. I'm always paranoid that they're going to think I didn't try as hard as they did. They're going to how can they think that I can do the thing that they can do and they can barely do it? And I can, just that mom talk that goes in your brain. I think he causes me every year to have less of that nonsense and kind of is it pronounced Saint Zelly or Zeely? I'm new to saints, but she says oh, well, and that's only this morning and it's only noon. If it continues like this, I'll be dead by the evening. I totally love that quote, because yes, she's saying it's bad, but it's not a negative quote. It's just saying, it's just like making a little dark joke and moving on.
How has Hershey touched the lives of his siblings? What does family life look like?
Well, definitely it's normalized disability for them. I'm so thankful that the rest of their lives, as they encounter different types of people, not just things like severe, like we're in a wheelchair, but just even differences. We met a lady who had a prosthetic leg, and my oldest was like, oh, it's so cool. She has a robot leg, and it's probably been so hard for her in life to transition. I don't know her story, but to transition to that. But for him, it's so cool. And that's how he's got it framed. And when my third was born, my oldest son said, so does he have Down syndrome or anything? He's just checking, because to him, it's such a frequent occurrence for people to have different diagnoses, and he's totally comfortable with it. They're friends with disabilities that don't have obviously not physical danger situations, but they have friends with Down syndrome that they will rough and tumble with, and they do not care that. They do not treat him differently in that way, and they see special needs everywhere, even where it's not. I guess technically that is a special need. And I love that for them, because then we had a friend come over, an alumni from the same school that he goes to, and she's not able to, on her own easily kick a ball or throw a ball. But my 2-year-old, he's almost 3, he kind of assessed the situation, scanned her and was like, okay, this is a friend who doesn't he's understanding, this is a friend who is not going to just kick a ball if I put it in front of her. So he's grabbing her foot and kicking the ball for her, and he's putting the ball in her hand. He's throwing her hand for her. And that was such a special moment to me, because I thought, oh, we haven't even talked about it, obviously, because he's 2, but he can scan a friend and say, they play differently. Okay, noted, and just move forward.
Mm-hmm. How has Hershey affected your relationship with your husband, and what's your husband's relationship with him?
Yeah, so he's definitely a daddy's boy. So of all my kids, he's my only daddy's boy, my daddy's kid, you could say, because I have a daughter now. But they have all preferred me or wanted me in the night, but he is definitely the one that wants dad. And My husband, before we had Hershey, was, dare I say, afraid of special needs. He, like, this is kind of funny, but like, he wouldn't even watch Forrest Gump with me. He refused to watch it because he, like, maybe has like delays, like cognitive delays of some kind, the character, fictional character. And he just was like, I'm just going to feel too bad for him. I'm just going to feel too bad. And I would say, why? Like, the whole point of it is how he has this great life and he does all these things and he's happy. And I used to watch, of course, doing pro-life work, like a lot of commentary on disability. And he would just think, oh, why do you watch that? And just like now, just being so unafraid to just get in the middle of the medical muck at any time. It's so cool to see as his wife. It's true, the divorce rate is extremely high in disability. Depending on what survey you're looking at, it can be upwards of 80-90%. And so it is very important to preserve. People say preserve your marriage in that situation because it's better outcome when you can help it, for that child. But easier said than done, because logistically, how do you get that done? And especially if you're going to be open to life and you're going to continue to add kids to your family, how does that work? And so for us, we just, by the grace of God, have respite programs near us. So during the school year, every other month, we get about 2 hours together. We do, if we have something we really want to get to, like a lecture or an event we really want to get to that kids absolutely cannot come to, we do have grandparents that help, and not everybody has that. And I think that is the reason that we've been able to go so strong. And then also the fact that Nate, my husband's name, Nate, was leaning into his faith at the time. I think it's extremely difficult when one is leaning in and one is leaning out. And so the fact that we were both leaning in was really, really helpful. And that's just the grace of God. But I would say if somebody's really struggling with making that happen, it would even be, my practical advice for that would be, if you have no grandparents near you, no friends that can medically handle the situation, and you say you can't get the approval for any kind of in-home nursing or paid caregiver, anything, to ask your community to fundraise just the amount you would need to privately hire a nurse just for 2-3 hours every couple months, like whatever would be possible to price out, to call nursing agencies and say, how much does it cost per hour? Like, how could we do this? How could we work together? A nursing agency stands to make a profit, so they should be able to help you navigate, like, how can we make this work? It might be pretty difficult, since most people want like an 8 or 10 hour shift, but that would be like my way of saying anything you can do, even if you have to meet another parent and pay another medical parent to help, because the divorce rate is so high and your child will have such better outcomes. We've had medical professionals tell us, if you can help it, again, there are so many circumstances, but if you can help it, having a married 2-parent home does a lot more than a lot of medical interventions can do.
That's a really great point. And obviously, what you're saying is that you have to be really intentional in your marriage. Obviously, everyone has to be intentional in their marriage, but having a child with disability means that, again, carving out time and getting the resources you need so that you can have time for each other is super important, and not only for your marriage but also for your family, for even for Hershey's growth and development and the rest of your kids. So that's really beautiful because you're witnessing to that as well. If you had to describe Hershey in just 3 words, what would they be?
Joyful, mischievous, or some people say mischievous. Got that from a friend. And peaceful.
Beautiful. What has Hershey taught you about courage?
Just to push through when we just don't feel like it. Sometimes the courage is just showing up when we have every reason not to.
Mm-hmm. And what has this journey taught you about love?
Really, it's taught me about how much God loves us, because when you think about what you'd be willing to do for your child, or if you're a caregiver of some other type, your aging parent, your grandparent, your sibling, anybody you're taking care of, it shows you, wow, how much I love them and what I would do. I often say, oh, before I did XYZ, we'd be living in an apartment, one vehicle, da da da. I list all the things I would sacrifice before I did X, negative outcome. You think, oh my gosh, God loves me so much more than that. Yeah.
And if people remember one thing from your family's story, what do you hope it is?
It sounds so cheesy, but life is what you make it, and that you can decide to stay home and be in a negative space and to feel rejected and like the only person with your own circumstance, or you can decide that you are different. Things are hard and we're going to do it anyways, whatever it is, whatever family activity, goal. It doesn't mean everything's achievable, but it means that we can adapt our circumstances to living a full life and choose life as in living life abundantly.
Well, you certainly are. And thank you for being such a beautiful witness. You yourself, your family, Hershey, you're all witnesses to this abundant life. So thank you for sharing your story with the audience. And hopefully it's going to bless other people as well. Thank you,
Yeah.
Anja.
Yeah, thank you.
From my conversation with Anja Baker, a pro-life advocate, wife, mother of 4, and parent to a son with complex medical needs, Hershey, who suffered a severe brain injury at birth, here are 5 key takeaways about raising a child with complex medical needs. 1. Every human life has inherent dignity, regardless of ability. Anja explains that the value of a person's life is not determined by intelligence, independence, happiness, productivity, or physical ability. Hershey's life has reinforced her conviction that every human being possesses inherent dignity simply because they are human. 2. Grief and gratitude can exist at the same time. After Hershey's birth injury, Anja grieved the future she had imagined while learning to fully embrace the son right in front of her. She shares how grief didn't disappear overnight, but over time it became more manageable, making room for joy, hope, and unexpected blessings. 3. Medical parenting means learning to become your child's best advocate. Parents of children with complex medical needs often begin feeling completely overwhelmed, not even knowing what questions to ask. Over time, Anja learned that while doctors bring expertise, parents become the true experts on their own child through experience, observation, and perseverance. 4. Having community and strong support systems gives parents the space to dream again. Anja shares how a strong support network, including Harbor Day School, therapists, respite ministries, church, family, friends, and fellow parents, transformed her family's journey. By believing in Hershey's potential before she could, the school's teachers and therapists helped their entire family begin dreaming about the future again. 5. Hope doesn't mean circumstances become easy, it means you don't have to face them alone. Anja offers an honest picture of hope. Raising a child with significant disabilities still involves sacrifice, uncertainty, and limitations. But faith, community, and God's grace provide the strength to keep moving forward one day and sometimes one moment at a time, and to appreciate the blessings as well. Because truth matters and human dignity isn't optional. This is Bioethics Babe. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Bioethics Babe podcast. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and your favorite podcast platform, and share with your friends and family. Also check out bioethicsbabe.com for the latest episodes and resources.